Hello class, welcome to lab number 2, installing Ubuntu 22.04 in Virtualbox. This lab is going to be long because we're going to cover a lot of things, but this is the first fun lab that we're going to have, so let's get started. These are the presentations that cover the material in this lab, the basics of virtualization using Virtualbox, and installing Ubuntu 20.04 in Virtualbox. Notice that this presentation was made in the earlier version of Ubuntu, but the changes are they are not that meaningful for me to recreate an entire presentation just for that. Instead, every time you find something that doesn't look exactly the same, just assume it was improved in the newer version, and that's why it doesn't look the same. Requirements. Before you start this, go over the presentation. Just go over, skim through them. It's going to give you an idea of what we're doing over here. Please take it slow. Go slow in this lab, and if it has to take you longer, it's okay. You have 7 days to complete it anyway, and I'm open to give you extra time if you need it. If you do not have a computer that meets the recommended criteria for the course and to do this lab, stop, reach out to me, and let's see if we can work something out with you. Beware that the presentations I made in an earlier version of Ubuntu and a probably earlier version of Virtualbox, so there might be some slight changes. Only start this lab after you have watched the videos or read the presentations, but if you're like me, you're probably going to continue watching the video anyway. Okay, so let's go with question number 1, enable virtualization. Now, in order for you to create virtual machines, you need to have virtualization, a feature of your CPU enabled. This can be done on the, it can only be done in the BIOS or UEFI. If your computer has virtualization disabled, you can follow this tutorial over here, which is going to show you, actually that's for M1 Macs, what is it? Windows user, right over here. If you have a Mac, virtualization is already enabled for you, you don't have to worry. Most modern Windows computer have virtualization already enabled, but there is always one or two students who have a computer that the manufacturer disabled virtualization on the CPU, on the motherboard, so always be aware. I'll show you how to know if virtualization is enabled anyway. So, now I want to talk about Mac users. If you're using a Mac, and you're using an M1 Mac, you can virtualize, but you're just not going to be able to use Virtualbox. Here is this tutorial by this gentleman over here. I don't have a Mac, so I haven't tested out. You go ahead and test it out and let me know if it worked for you. There are going to be things that aren't going to work just the same in our class for you because you have an M1 Mac, but we can work things out. Like, just talk to me ahead of time. If you encounter an issue, we'll try to fix it together. If you have an Intel Mac and it meets the criteria for the class, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. Virtualbox also works in that computer with no problem. Now let's talk about for Windows user. If you have a Windows computer, make sure that it meets this criteria. You have a quad-core CPU or a dual-core with a 2.0 GHz frequency. I prefer the quad-core or more. Dual-core CPUs are out of the window already and are going to give you a low performance anyway. It's just going to work, but it's going to work way too slow. It's not going to be an enjoyable trip. RAM, 6 GB or more. Most modern Windows 10 computers have at least 8 GB, but if you have less than 4 or 4, this is not going to work for you. It's going to be way too slow for you to operate successfully. At least 60 GB of free storage, because 40 of those are going to be used for your virtual machine. If you have any issues figuring this out, don't worry, we're going to do it now. If your computer meets or exceeds this criteria, then you need to check if virtualization is enabled. You can follow this guide over here to enable virtualization if virtualization is disabled. This shows you also how to check if virtualization is enabled. The easiest way is with the task manager. Now, it's time for me to turn on my Windows virtual machine so that I can show you how that looks like exactly. So this is Windows 10. Most of you are probably using Windows 11, but the process is the same, so you don't have to worry about it being different. Just give it a second. And here is my virtual machine. I can press Alt, Delete, Alt, Control, and Delete. Oh, sorry. Let me switch my keyboard to Windows. Or I can right-click on the taskbar and click on Task Manager. It's going to open like this. It can also open like this for you. Just make sure you click on More Details. In Performance, over here, it should say Virtualization Enabled. If it doesn't say virtualization enabled, it means that virtualization is disabled in your system. Another way that you can do it is with system information. This app over here, if you scroll all the way down, it's gonna tell you is virtualization is enabled. Now, there is also another application called Speci. So we're gonna go and install that now. Speci. Right here. Oops, that's the wrong place. Make sure you get it from CCleaner because they are the maker of this program. Click OK over here and download the free version. Download again. And the download is completed, so we're going to execute this. We can close that, we don't need it. And we can close that, we don't need it either. Okay, now we're going to click on install over here. And that's done. And we're going to click on run Speci. This is going to search your computer and it's going to give you, and I didn't know why it closed like that, and it's going to give you all the information about your computer. Okay, so I have a Ryzen 5 5600X. If we click on the CPU, this is going to give me all the information about the CPU. And notice that here in virtualization, it says virtualization not supported. And that is because I have virtualization disabled in this virtual machine. Now I'm going to close this and I'm going to shut this computer off. And I'm going to enable virtualization so that you see how it looks like. I'm going to go here to settings, advanced, description, no. Processor, enable nested virtualization, okay. Okay, now if we go on the Speci real quick, click on CPU, let that information load. Notice that now it says virtualization supported because I have enabled virtualization in my computer. After you go in the BIOS and you check if you check on virtualization, it should say virtualization supported over there. Now, if you're having problems during that step, reach out to me and I'll help you through. We can hop on a Zoom call and we can play around with it. Okay, now I'm going to close here and we're going to continue with the instructions. Okay. So, after you enable virtualization, we can continue with question number 2. We're going to create a virtual machine. Now, before we do that, we need to install Virtualbox. So I'm going to go back to my Windows page over here and I'm going to go to, let's just open Firefox. It doesn't matter what web browser I use. And we're going to search for, not now, Virtualbox. Okay, Virtualbox, Oracle Virtualbox, and this is the page you should be seeing. You're gonna click on download Virtualbox 6.1. If you're using Windows, you click on Windows host. If you're using OS 10, you click on OS 10. I'm gonna click on virtual host. Also, if anyone is using Linux natively in your computer, let me know and I can make a video on how to do all of this directly from Linux. Otherwise, I will assume that you know how to Google and that you know how to do this on your own. Okay, now that we download this file, we also need to download this, which is the extension pack. And we click on all supported platforms and that download goes right away. When I click over here with this installer, run. This installation shouldn't take long either. Then click on next, 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 yes, install, and just let it do its thing. Once it's done, click on finish. And now we're going to install the extension pack. So we're going to click in my downloads and click on this icon over here. You can also find it in your downloads folder, and I'm going to click on agree and click OK. We are good to go. I can close that. I can close that. Let me open Virtualbox again. Okay, we're good to go. Now we can create a new virtual machine. And what we're gonna find is we're gonna look for what specifications we need to give to our virtual machine, right? So I'm going to, let's go to our website real quick because we have the specifications over there, cis106.com. And we go to lab number 2, and right over here we have that we need to the OS, which is gonna be this. So we are gonna click on this ISO URL, which is gonna take us to the download page. And we're gonna click on download Ubuntu desktop homepage. Here, 2204 LTS, that's what we're downloading, and click on download. The download will start shortly. Now go grab a cup of coffee, wait until that is done, or you can do the steps that I'm gonna do now, and then once the download is done, continue with the lab. So I'm gonna minimize this, and I'm gonna create on new. Okay, I'm gonna put this on the side, hold on. And I'm gonna put this on the side over here. Okay, go back. Now, let's just click on new. What is the name? Always give your virtual machine a meaningful name. I like to call mine the operating system that I'm installing, Ubuntu, _, and then if I'm doing this for a course, then a course. If I'm doing it for a project, then the project name. Since this is for CIS 106, I do CIS 106. Since I teach this every semester, I like to specify the semester, which is F22 for fall 22. You don't have to do the last part, but you know, it would be nice. The type is going to be Linux, and the version is going to be Ubuntu 64-bit. If it says Ubuntu 32-bit, that means virtualization is disabled in your computer, and you need to go back to the previous step and enable virtualization. It has to say Ubuntu 64 bits. Let's click on next. In the amount of RAM, we say that we're going to give it 2 gigabytes, right? 2 gigabytes is fine. 2048. You can give it more RAM if you have RAM to spare, but 2 gigabytes should be enough for what we're going to do during the course. Okay, now we're going to do create virtual hard disk now, and click on create. VDI, virtual disk image, click on next, and we're going to choose dynamically allocated. Next. And the size here is gonna be 40 gigabytes, right? HDD, hard disk drive. This is asking for the size of the hard drive, and we said that 40 should be enough for what we are going to do. Let's click on create, and we're almost done. Now we're gonna click on settings, and we're gonna do a couple of more things. For example, if we go here, we need to enable this to be directional, this to be directional. In the description, we're gonna put this. You're gonna put your own password over here. This is so that you remember your password. I'm gonna leave mine as PCCC. Yeah, I'm gonna leave the username as a student as well. It doesn't really matter. But here you should put your username. I suggest your Blackboard username. You know, mine will be R.A. Alberto. R.A. Alberto. Yours, you know, your Blackboard username. That's a nice naming convention. And host name is the name of the computer. CIS 106 VM, it's pretty good. Okay, we're not going to use disk encryption, so we skip that. We're going to disable floppy disk, move it all the way down because we don't need it. You're going to leave this as is. In the processor part, you need to choose 2 CPUs. Now, I'm not going to be installing Ubuntu in this virtual machine exactly. As you can see, it doesn't really meet the requirements, but that's what you need to choose, 2 CPUs. Okay, acceleration, we leave that as default. In display, we're going to bring this all the way to the max. 64 or 128 is fine. As you can see here, 64 is the minimum. I suggest you bring it all the way till the end, which is better. And I suggest you enable 3D acceleration as well. Leave the rest as is. In storage, we need to wait until this is done downloading to put the installation disk over here, because this is the virtual DVD drive where we're gonna put the disk to install our operating system. Okay, in audio, I'm gonna disable this. We're not gonna need audio in this virtual machine. We're gonna leave network as it is. Once we get to install the server version, we're gonna play around with that, but for right now, that's okay, and the rest is also fine. Okay, this is done installing, so I'm gonna click here, I'm gonna click choose disk file, downloads, and then here, and then click on open. Now you click on OK, and you're ready to do the next step. Okay, the next step is installing Ubuntu 2204. I'm gonna pause the video now so that I can do all of this in my actual computer and continue from there on. Okay, now we're ready to turn our computer on. Click on start. This little box is gonna appear. We're gonna click on try or install Ubuntu. This is gonna do a disk check to make sure that the installation file you downloaded from the internet is correct. Once the checking is done, if it doesn't fail, it should load to this page over here. We are not going to try Ubuntu, that's something we, if you want to play around with the system before you can install it, then you click on try Ubuntu. If you want to go straight to the installation, you click on install Ubuntu. In this case, we're just going to go straight to the installation. So we're going to click on install Ubuntu. We're going to check the language over here of our keyboard. English is the default. It's going to get read by our system hardware. We're going to install third-party software because we need it. And we're going to go with normal installation. We want everything that comes with the operating system. Okay, now over here we're going to click on erase disk and install Ubuntu. This is a virtual hard drive of 40 gigabytes that we created. It's an empty drive, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to click on install now. It's going to tell us which changes it's going to make, and we're going to click on continue. Now it's asking us for a time zone. This is gathered from the system locale. I'm in New York. That's good enough. So I'm going to click on continue. Now our name. What is your name? You can write here your name. I'm going to say Robert. And your computer name we said was going to be CIS106 VM. And the PIC name we say we're gonna be using our Blackboard username. So mine is R Alberto, and then we're gonna choose a password over here. I'm gonna choose mine as PCCC, which is pretty bad because it's pretty short. It's a very easy to crack password. And when I click on require my password to log in, we're gonna click on continue. We're not gonna be using the Active Directory here. And once this process is done, you have successfully installed Ubuntu. This is going to take about 12 to 15 minutes. It can be less depending on the hardware of your computer. This is a good chance for you to go grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, glass of water, whatever you choose. Come back in 12, 15 minutes. Okay, now that the installation is done, we're going to click on restart now. Let's go back to our guide over here. The one thing that I have not been doing just to make this video faster is taking the screenshots over here. Make sure that at the end of every question you take the necessary screenshots that you need. Take a screenshot of a virtual machine. This one I can take right now, so let me just do that. This is what you need in your screenshot. So, you take a screenshot of your VM, make sure that all the settings are there, and we're gonna save this, and I'm gonna put it inside documents, create new folder. I'm gonna call it lab2, create, and then I'm gonna call this question 2, Q2 for short, question 2, save. Okay, then when you get to this window over here, just press enter, that's it. If it hangs, then click the X over here and restart the machine, but normally it doesn't hang. Okay, so I'm gonna click here and I'm going to, let's go back over here, make sure that I'm not stopping anything. Okay, so take a screenshot of a virtual machine showing the snapshot. Okay, for question number 3, take a screenshot of the last screen before rebooting Ubuntu, but if you missed it, you can take a screenshot of this and that would be fine, right? So, because the only thing I want to see is that you did the installation. That's the only thing we're proving in this section over here, that you did the installation. Okay, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call it q3.png. So post-installation task. At this point, if you want to continue doing your lab another day, you can stop. Because these tasks are going to take a little bit, but if you're done, if you think, okay, I'm done for today, you can stop and continue the following day. If not, let's continue. So we're going to do an update and an upgrade. So there are a couple of ways we can do that. So first, let's sign in. Okay, so this is a little welcome screen that you got over here. Here we can connect online accounts if we have any. We're not going to do that. If you have, for example, a Google Drive, you can connect it here with Google, and the Google Drive becomes like a folder in your computer. We're not gonna do that over here. If you want to keep this on, good. If you want to say no, that's fine. We're gonna leave privacy off because we're gonna see location services off. We don't need that on. And here I just tell you, hey, you know, we have a bunch of apps. If you want to go play around with that, click on Open Software Now. We're not gonna do that. We're just gonna click on Done. Now, if you wait like a minute, the software updater is gonna pop up, right? It's just gonna pop up telling you, hey, there are new updates, because, you know, by the time this image was released, the following day, I guarantee you that there were minor updates that they needed to release. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna show you how the update looks like. So if you click here on software update, this window is gonna pop up and it's gonna look for all the updates that your computer needs. You know, things that were released after the image of Ubuntu 22.04.1 was released to the general public, and then it's gonna ask you, hey, here are all the updates that you need to do. Would you like to do them now? And if you click on details, it shows you all the stuff that is going to update. Now, I'm not gonna do it this way. I'm gonna show you the terminal way right away. So I'm gonna close this, and I'm gonna click over here, and I'm gonna search for an application called Terminal. We're gonna open this scary purple box in our case, and we're gonna type sudo apt update, semicolon, sudo apt upgrade. Press enter and type your password. While you're typing your password, nothing is gonna show on the screen. That's a security feature, that's not a bug. You can turn that off, by the way, but I don't recommend you to do that. Now here it's gonna tell you, hey, I'm gonna update all of these programs that are inside your computer. If you press yes, I'm gonna use 7,796 kilobytes of additional space, and I'm gonna press Y and enter to say, yes, I want you to do these updates. And since that's not a big update, it's gonna be really quick. It's a good opportunity to mention that when you're running stuff in the terminal, while a program is running, you cannot do nothing with the terminal. If you want to continue working, you will have to open another terminal. There is a way to bypass that, and I'll show you as the course progresses. But for now, let's understand that that's the way it works. Okay, that update took a little longer than I was expecting. We can close this. Add canonical partners in the software settings. Okay, so we are gonna go back here, and we're gonna click here. We're gonna search for the word software. Okay, so we're gonna click this, software and updates, the blue one. Okay, and in other software, is it over here? Community canonical support, different open source, restricted, no, updates, authentication, additional developer live patch. I guess it's not available here in this new version. Okay, that's fine. Set up a daily reminder to never, so we're gonna do that here in updates. Automatically check for updates daily when there are security updates, download it automatically. When there are other updates, display weekly. So we're gonna do this to never. We're gonna choose when we're gonna check for updates ourselves. Authenticate and change Wayland to XOR. Okay, we're gonna click close and we're gonna log out. Click over here and then click log out. Log out. So we're gonna change the display server because a couple of the programs we're gonna use are not gonna work right on the new with Wayland. So we're gonna use XOR and we're gonna log in one more time. Okay. Take a snapshot. Okay, but before we do that, we are going to power off the machine. Okay, we're gonna go here, and then in the little menu over here, we're gonna click and we're gonna click on the snapshots. We're gonna click on take. Always take a snapshot with your virtual machine off, by the way. Snapshot 1, updates, and installation. Okay, and then click OK. This is gonna save the state of that computer on the point that we left it right now. If something goes wrong, we don't need to reinstall the operating system or anything. We just come back here and we revert back to this snapshot over here. I encourage you to take a new snapshot and delete the old one every time you finish a lab. It's one of the benefits of using a virtual machine. Okay, then we need to take a screenshot of this. And we're gonna save it in Documents. I'm gonna call it Q4. Click on Save, and we're gonna start the virtual machine. Question 5, which is the longest of them all. We are going to install the guest additions, which is going to allow us to go full screen, and it's going to allow us to drag and drop files from our host computer to our guest computer, you know, and that's going to make our system better to use. Right, because right now, if you try to go full screen, notice that it only goes full screen in this little square over here, and that's not nice. That's not something we want. There are two ways of installing the guest additions. We can insert an installation disk from here. Click on Devices and click on Insert Guest Addition, and that's going to run a little program, and it's going to do all the work for us. Or we can do it via the command line like this. You know, we do an update, we install this, and then we install this. Now, the best method is to do it like this: Insert Guest Addition, because this method works about 98% of the time. The other method, every once in a while, it doesn't work for me. So I suggest you always use this. Give it a second. Come on. Okay, it didn't open automatically, so I'm just gonna open here, and I'm gonna click here, the disk, run software. And this should open a terminal for a program to run. And I wonder why it isn't working. Let's see, let's click one more time and see. Okay, that's not working, so we're gonna do it the long way. Click, right click over here, click on Open Terminal, and we're gonna do /bbox, and once we want to run is this one. So bbox Linux additions.run. You need to run this program with administrator privileges, so all we have to do is type sudo /bbox Linux additions, and then enter. Type your password. Remember, your password is not going to show. I think I typed it wrong. Yes, I did. Too many C's. And let that run. Okay, notice that this requires a restart, and as the instructions say, reboot the VM and then go full screen. So we're gonna click over here, and then restart, and then restart. Okay. Now that we have logged in, we need to disable animations. That's gonna make our computer speedier. By the way, if you go back out of full screen and you go full screen again, notice that it takes the whole width now, which is great. Okay, now we're gonna open a terminal. Notice how slow this is. It's not really smooth. You know, that's because those animations, they really get in the way of making things, you know, snippier. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna paste it here. Press enter, and now this is much snappier, but you know, it's not as smooth. It doesn't have these animations that you saw before. We don't need them because in a virtual machine we want performance over pretty things. Using the software center, we're going to install VS Code. So we're gonna close this and we're gonna click over here, Ubuntu software. This is the app store for Ubuntu, and if we want to install applications, this is a very nice way of doing it. There are other ways to do it, which we're gonna cover in the following week when we cover installing software, but for now, this is fun to do. Okay, now all we have to do is, you can play around and install more software if you like. You know, at the end of the day, it's your computer, you do whatever you want with it. Click over here and install VS Code. Okay, didn't appear, let me see code only. Should be here. Oh, I think I passed it. Right here, code. Click on install. It's gonna ask you for your password. Isn't this much better than what we did on Windows, where we have to go get an installation file from the internet and double click on the installation file, then go through a prompt and all of that stuff? I just prefer this method much. It's just better. I mean, what isn't better on Linux? Gaming. Gaming isn't. Not true. It's great too. Okay, the installation is done. We can close this. And we are gonna launch VS Code. Okay, I'm gonna go full screen real quick, and I'm gonna remove this from my favorites, remove this from my favorites, remove this, remove the software center, remove this, remove ejecta, we don't need it, and I'm just gonna leave these three here. I'm also going to add my terminal application to my favorites, add to favorites, so it stays over there. Okay, now we're gonna click on the gear icon, extensions, and we're gonna install all the extensions that we need. Let's just start with Markdown all-in-one. Install, then we need Markdown preview enhanced. Then we need Markdown PDF. Then we need Markdown POC. And after that, we need PDF preview so that we can preview PDF files in VS Code, which is nice. Then we need code spell checker. And I believe we also need live server here. Live server. Install. Okay. Now, using the terminal, we're going to remove these applications here. We don't need them. They are just occupying unnecessary space. So I'm going to close VS Code. Notice that while I am using my virtual machine, I try to have at least no more than 2 applications open. Remember, this is a virtual machine with only 2 gigabytes of RAM. So you need to be very cheap about the number of applications you run simultaneously. This is going to make it so your experience is smoother, right? You don't have unlimited RAM, you know, like you have probably on your regular computer, when you can open 2, 3, 4, 5 Google Chrome tabs and a couple of other applications and a game in the background. No, this is a very, very limited computer, so we need to be very conscious of that. Okay. Then using the software center, just so that you practice, install these applications. But if you're short on time, you can just copy and paste this command over here, which is going to install them on the command line, and it's going to be much faster as well. So that's what I'm going to do here. At the end of the day, the option for the software center was just so that you play around with it and you practice. You know, it's always good to install stuff that way so that you can get a feel for the operating system. but the command line is faster, so I'm gonna do the command line for the video so that the video doesn't take forever. Okay, the program has been installed, so let's see. Using the terminal, install all of these applications over here. You can copy these commands one by one, so that's what we are gonna do. Here, paste. As a matter of fact, let's do something a little bit more fun. Let's open a text editor here. Let's click on paste. Let's copy these guys. Let's paste it all over here. Let's click on save. And we're gonna save this with the following name. Install programs.sh. Let's click on save. And over here on the top, we're gonna put the following line. Exclamation mark, pound sign, bin, bash. Let's click on save. Let's close this. Now over here, actually let's see if we can do it through here, and we probably can. Let's click on properties, permissions, and allow executing as program. Make sure you click this. We can close it, and here we're gonna type period / and then we're gonna type IN and then tab. The tab key will autocomplete the command that you're typing, and press enter. This should work as it goes. If it gives you a permission problem, type the same command but with sudo at the beginning. But if you did it just the way I did it, you shouldn't have a problem because we recently ran a command with sudo. Now let that run. This is gonna take a little bit. That's a bunch of programs that's installing that we're gonna use throughout the semester. I'd rather we have installed those programs now so that later on in the future, it makes our life easier. Let's see what's next after we do this. Okay, we need to replace the default screenshot with flameshot. We can do that meanwhile this happens, we can do that. Let's minimize this. And let's go over here and click on settings. Then we're gonna go to keywords, and then over here we're gonna click on view and customize shortcuts. We're gonna go to where it says screenshots, and here it says take a screenshot, Shift P, take a screenshot interactively. This we don't want, so we're going to we click on it. Then press the backspace key, the one you use for deleting words when you're typing. That's gonna disable it, and we'll click on set. That's not the program that we want to take screenshots with. We want to use flameshot because it's gonna be more interactive for us. We can do more with that program that we could do with the default one. So we're gonna close this, and then we're gonna click on the same thing and custom shortcuts, and then add shortcut, and here we're gonna type the name flameshot. The command is gonna be flameshot GUI, and then gonna click on set shortcut, and I'm gonna choose the print screen key on my keyboard. Again, I'm gonna choose the print screen key on my keyboard. Okay, and then we're gonna click on add. Now, if you press the print screen keyboard on your keyboard, it launches Flameshot, which is that beautiful screenshot program that I was using before, that has a ton of features for us, like drawing squares, drawing a square with with colors inside, so that we can blank things out of a screenshot, like a password or something like that. We can write with it, draw arrows, can do a bunch of stuff. Copy to clipboard, undo, redo. We can also blur things out from a screenshot, draw circles. Play around with it. It's your computer. Play around with it. Okay, I'm gonna press the escape key because I don't want to save that. And now I can close this and close that. Let's see how the installation is going. It's still going. Let's see then what else is to do here. We're gonna set up Git and download our repository to our Ubuntu machine. So the first thing that I should do is open Firefox, which is gonna take a little bit to load because this is the snap version of Firefox. It's a concept that I will introduce next class. but it only takes a while to launch on the first time. The second time and then subsequent times it's gonna launch right away. Again, if it took a little bit to launch, don't panic. Don't spam the icon by clicking a million times. Just be patient. It takes a little bit to open the first time. Okay. Now we're gonna go to github.com. And I'm gonna go also to cis106.com from here. And I'm gonna click on view full screen mode. Notice what it says here, host and F. Your host key is normally the right control key on your keyboard. I'm gonna go here. Notice this is telling you if you wanna exit the full screen mode, please press host plus F, which is the right control screen key on your keyboard and letter F at the same time. I'm gonna click on switch, and now, just like my Windows virtual machine before, Ubuntu is taking up all the space on my monitor, which is great. I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna click on sign in. Just give me one quick second. Let me move this over here. And there you go, perfect. So let's go here and let's type my username, which is Linux Workshop 67 at gmail.com, and my password. Sign in, and I'm not gonna save it. If you want to save it in your virtual machine, that's fine. I'm not gonna save it. Don't have to. And this is my repository over here, CIS106 Fold 22. Over here I have all the files from the last time that I submitted anything to GitHub, and I'm gonna minimize that for now. See how this is going. This is almost done, which is great. Okay, now over here, lab number 2, question number 5. Okay, I sign in to GitHub. Now we're gonna sign in to your GitHub account, open a terminal, and we're gonna run these commands here. Now, git config global username. Okay, copy this, and then we're gonna click over here in the plus sign, and this is gonna open a new terminal in the tab. We're gonna click on paste. Notice that over here, this is still running. We're gonna delete the part that says your username here, and we are gonna put our GitHub username. Mine is Linux Workshop 67. Your username is right over here. This is your username. Press enter, and then we're gonna run a similar command, git config global user.email, and then you're gonna type your email address there. Mine is Linux Workshop 67 at gmail.com. Press enter, and we're almost done. After that, we are going to generate an SSH key so that we can send and retrieve files from our GitHub account in our terminal with no issue. How we do that? You see this command over here. We're gonna copy this. We're gonna paste it in our terminal, and right after the command, we're gonna type our email address, linuxworkshop67 at gmail.com. Remember, you signed up to your GitHub account with your PCCC email address, so that's the email address you're gonna put over there, the one you used to sign up to your GitHub account. Press enter, and over here we're just gonna press enter. The default location is fine. We're gonna enter a passphrase. Now, since this is a testing environment, isolated in a virtual machine, you don't have to enter a passphrase. But if you want the extra security, by all means, enter the passphrase. In my case, I don't want the extra security right now. If this was a development computer, right, where I write code, right, and I do the production stuff, then yes, I would love the extra security. In this case, this is just a playground for us to goof around, so we don't need it. So I'm just gonna press enter, and I'm gonna press enter again. This has generated our SSH key, and now what we need to do is see the SSH key, because we need to copy it to our clipboard. You can do it by simply copying this command over here. Later on, we're going to see what the cat command does. And we're going to click on paste and press enter. You're going to copy this whole thing. So you can either double click or select the whole thing and copy. Now we're going to go here. And we're going to click on, we're going to our GitHub repo. We're going to click over here. And we're going to click on settings. Again, your icon on the top and then settings. Then you're going to go to SSH and GPG keys. Then over here, you're going to click on new SSH key. You're going to give it a name. I'm going to call mine Ubuntu CIS 106 Fall 22. Here, you're going to paste your SSH key. Make sure you delete that space that you see over there. Every character must match what is in your computer, and that space is considered a character. Click on add SSH key and you are done over here. So now that we've done that part, we are going to test our SSH connection. So we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it in our terminal over here. Type yes, you have to type the whole word yes, and press enter. You should receive a message like this. Hi, your username. You have successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access. If you receive an error message over here, it's probably because your SSH key is wrong and you didn't delete the backspace or you just put an extra character in there. Okay? Now we're going to clone our GitHub repository. And to do that, it's very simple. First, we are going to make sure that we are in our home directory. So I'm just going to type cd. Then we're going to type the following command. Git clone git at github.com. If you notice, is the command over here. Colon your GitHub username. Mine is Linux Workshop 67 / and then the name of your repository. The name of your repository is this over here. I'll show you. This is the name of your repository over here. Right, mine is CIS 106 F22. So I'm going to type CIS 106 F22. Press enter, and this is going to download your GitHub repository to your computer. If you open a file manager, you're going to notice you have now a new folder over here that is your GitHub repository. This folder contains all the files that you have on GitHub. We're going to close that, and we're going to go over here. Open VS Code, open a file manager, and go to your repository you clone. Organize the files as I do in the video. Okay, now, inside here, we're going to have some things. First, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Labs, and I'm going to click on Create. I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call it Week Reports. I'm going to create another folder, and here I'm going to call it Final Project, right? And is there anything else that you work in my class? No, that's all you do in my class. For now, later on we're going to create more folders. Now, all the files for your weekly reports go over here. Now, I'm going to organize labs first. So I know all of this is from lab 1. So I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to drag it inside labs. Inside labs, I'm going to create a new folder called lab 1. And all the files for lab 1 are going to go in here. Right? I'm going to create another folder here called lab number 2, and I'm going to click on create. I'm going to go out of full screen for a moment, and I'm going to open a file manager in my computer. I'm going to go to documents where I have my lab 2, and I'm going to copy all those files and I'm going to put it inside lab 2. So I'm going to open lab 2, and I'm just going to drag this from my regular computer, from my host, into my guest machine. If this doesn't work, try restarting your computer and doing it again. If this consistently keeps failing, reinstall the guest edition image. Okay? As a last result, email those files to you and then download them in the virtual machine. But sure, if you install the guest edition properly, the drag and drop should work with no problem. And when it doesn't, a restart solves the problem. Let's see how the installation is going over here. Okay, when you get to this screen, press the tab key on your keyboard and press the space bar, not enter, the space bar. Use the arrow keys to move to yes and press the space bar again. Okay, we are over here. Let's continue working with okay, now that we have organized the files, we're gonna open VS Code and here we're gonna open VS Code. So we're gonna click here, we'll type VS Code. And I thought I added this to favorites. Guess I didn't. So I'm gonna do it now. Add to favorites. Perfect. We're gonna click on open folder. And we're gonna open our CIS 106 repository, that folder. Click on open. Notice all the files are gonna appear in the file manager. Yes, trust the authors of this repository. All the folders appear over here. Labs, lab 1, lab 2. Okay, so what we are gonna do is we're gonna open a terminal by clicking on terminal and new terminal. This is gonna open another scary black box where we can type commands. And here we are gonna type our commands to send all the files to GitHub. Now, what I want you to do is open a text editor. You're gonna save these commands in your computer because you're gonna refer to them regularly. The first command that we run is git add period, which add all the files to be tracked inside our regular folder. Then we're gonna do git commit -m, and we're gonna call this, you have to label every commit. Like every time you do a commit, you have to label it. It requires a label. Since this is the first commit, we're just gonna call it like that, first commit. And the last command that you're gonna type is git push. These three commands, you're gonna use it all the time. That's how you're gonna send data to GitHub. So you're gonna save this, save, and we're gonna call it git commands.txt. And you're gonna save them. And there you go. Now that we have saved these commands over here, let's go to our terminal here and let's type this command. So let's do git, you can copy paste them if you want. Git add period, git commit -m, first commit, and then git push. Press enter and voila. You have successfully sent your files to GitHub. And if you open your repository over here and you refresh the page, notice that whatever is in your computer is mirrored over here. The other two folders weren't sent here because they're empty at the moment. So there is no point in sending them to GitHub, they are empty. So you click on labs, lab 1, isn't this beautiful? Lab 2, there you go, a beautiful rose. That's what that looks like. Okay, let's continue with instructions. This doesn't require a screenshot, so we don't have to take a screenshot. And this says time to submit this lab. Okay, let me see. Okay, perfect. Inside your repository folder, okay, create a folder called lab 2. Copy the screenshots you took from your Windows computer to your lab 2 folders by drag and dropping them. We already did that. Place those files in a folder called lab 2. We already did that. Inside the lab 2 folder, create a new file named lab2.md. We haven't done that, and this is a good opportunity for us to do it on VS Code. So we're gonna click on labs, click on lab number 2, and then over here, with this highlighted, we're gonna click on the new file icon. We're gonna call this lab2.md. Okay? Then, after we do that, we are going to paste our screenshots in there. And that's actually quite simple, right? We're gonna use a little bit of the markdown we already learned. First, I wanna do this. This is called a font matter, and I'm gonna type here name, which is my name, R, Alberto. And then I'm gonna put here class, and this is CIS 106 fall. This is optional, you don't have to, but I just like to do it, right? So now we're gonna say, I'm gonna add a title of lab 2 submission, right? Then here we're gonna say, this is question, right? Question 2, question 3, question 4, and that's it, because you only need 3 screenshots in this lab. I'll put another space there, and I'm gonna start with an exclamation mark, open brackets. This is gonna be question 2, that's the description. And then in parentheses, we're gonna simply type the name of the file, which is q2.png. And that's it. Now over here, we're gonna do the same. Exclamation mark, open brackets, q3, open and close parentheses, question 3. And again, for question 4, open and close parentheses, question 4. Now we're gonna save this file by going on File, Save, and now notice there is no white dot over here in the corner. This file is successfully saved. We can run our git command. So we're gonna do git add period, git commit -m finished lab 2, enter, and then git push. Okie dokie. And I have a feeling we missed something. Okay, we missed converting the file to PDF, so we gotta do that now. So we're gonna go back here, and we're gonna right click, and then we're going to markdown PDF export, parentheses PDF. Click over there, that's gonna take a little bit. And our PDF file has been successfully converted, and notice that all my images are over there. It's always good to make sure your images are there. Okay, just make sure you didn't make a typo. And now we're gonna have to do another commit because that file was not sent to GitHub, but we want to make sure that what we have in our computer, we have on GitHub. So we have git add period, git commit -m added PDF file, lab 2, and then git push. Now that we have sent our files to GitHub, we are ready to submit this file. So we can go over here, vcc.edu, my pccc, .pcc.edu. Okay, don't save. Blackboard. And okay, and then our class. We go to labs, lab number 2, and then here, you are gonna give me, let's click on write submission. Over here, we're gonna put, let's refresh this. We're going to labs, lab number 2, and we're gonna open the markdown file. And you're gonna give me this URL. Like I like this little box over here. It's really nice. So we're gonna copy this URL and we're gonna paste it right here in our text submission. Okay. Now we're gonna click on Browse Local Files, and the file that we want is the PDF file. So we're gonna go to Home, CIS 106, Labs, lab number 2, and we want the PDF file, just the PDF file. Click on Open, and then click on Submit. And congratulations, you have successfully completed lab number 2. You are free to play around with this virtual machine as you desire. Now I am going to close this. I'm not going to click submit because it's not going to do anything. I'm the instructor. So I'm going to close this because we don't need it. And we're going to go over here. Make sure that our virtual machine is done. Notice that all the software that we were installing already was done. And we continue working in another terminal while the program was installing. Isn't Linux beautiful? We're gonna close this, and we're gonna close this. We can close that. We can close VS Code. We're done completely, and we're gonna take another snapshot now. So we're going to power off the machine. Power off. Okay, and here we're gonna go to snapshots. I'm going to delete this one. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to take a new one, and I'm going to call it lab 2 complete. And when I finish lab number 3, I do the same. I keep one snapshot of my previous lab because that was the last time that I successfully completed something and my virtual machine was working. Notice that I didn't turn off my virtual machine by clicking the X icon on the virtual machine window. I properly shut the computer off. It is important that you do it that way. The virtual machine can get corrupted if you do it by just clicking the X button on the corner. With that said, see you for lab number 3. Bye now.